What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome back to another movie review. Today we are going to be going over If. If, released in 2024, written and directed by John Krasinski, and I didn't even know John Krasinski did directing. I thought he only acted, so that was cool to find out. And honestly, he did a pretty good job with this movie. Let's get into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. The first essential aspect is plot. I like the plot of this movie. I think it was well written. It's definitely targeted more towards the kids' audience, which is fine. This is a kids movie, and even as an adult, I definitely do think it was written well. That it had an engaging plot. I mean, definitely engaging because the roller coaster of emotions I was put on during this movie was crazy, and I definitely think that they wrapped up the movie well at the end, and that's very important in any movie. Needing to wrap up the plot towards the end is very important. You don't want to leave any plot holes or cliffhangers unless obviously it's expecting a sequel. But I don't believe there's supposed to be a sequel to If. So overall, I do enjoy the plot of this movie. The second essential aspect is attraction. Now, this movie was definitely enjoyable. There were some scenes I weren't a fan of, like the scenes that were kind of like a musical where they were dancing and singing and all that. I feel like those were unnecessary. They could have kept them out and it would have been fine. But it is a movie for children, and kids do like watching musicals and the characters singing and dancing, like all the Disney movies. So I'm not surprised they had that in there, and honestly, it's not that bad for me. I just personally didn't enjoy it. But what I did like to see is the differences in all of the ifs, since an imaginary friend is created by all the individual children, and all of them think differently, like different things, and they make one personalized to them. So it was cool to see how many differences all of the ifs had, and how many there were. So it was super cool to see that. That was definitely entertaining for me. Plus, the premise is just so unique, so attraction box ticked off. The third essential aspect is theme. I think the theme of this movie is really simple. It was very easy to catch. Adults need friends just as much as kids do. Doesn't matter if you're a kid or an adult, both go through hard times and need a friend's shoulder to lean on. So that was clear to me watching this movie. The fourth essential aspect is dialogue. Now, the dialogue in this movie definitely felt real. It was a bit goofy, but again, a lot of the times in a kid's book, they kind of do push that to the limit to make it sound a little goofier, to kind of be more enjoyable by the kids watching it. So that's understandable. And I'm glad they had the ifs have their own voices matching their personality. They chose perfect actors to voice these ifs. It really did make it seem like they're their own individual beings instead of a collective, which was very good. And of course, Ryan Reynolds is in this movie, so his comedy always floors me, so I'm glad he was in this one as well. The fifth essential aspect is acting. So, of course, the actors in this are mostly voice actors because the ifs are all animated compared to the human actors like John Krasinski and Ryan Reynolds. But John Krasinski, who directed and wrote this movie, also starred in it as the dad and voiced the Marshmallow if, which was really cool to see. And honestly, as the dad, he did a great job portraying emotion during the sad scenes and also acting like the fun dad. I thought he was a perfect fit for that role 100%. But I'm going to start listing off all of the ifs now because it was a crazy number of people on this cast. So bear with me here. We got Steve Carell as Blue, Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Blossom, Louis Gossett Jr. as Lewis, funnily enough, Awkwafina as Bubble, Emily Blunt as Unicorn, George Clooney as Spaceman, Bradley Cooper as Ice, Matt Damon as Flower, Bill Hader as Banana, Richard Jenkins as Art Teacher, Keegan-Michael Key as Slime, Blake Lively as Octopus, Sebastian Maniscalco as Magician Mouse, Christopher Maloney as Cosmo, Matthew Rhys as Ghost, Sam Rockwell as Guardian Dog, Maya Rudolph as Alligator, Amy Schumer as Gummy Bear, Jon Stewart as Robot, and a special appearance by Brad Pitt as Keith, the Invisible If, which I thought was awesome. I mean, they're clearly referencing when Brad Pitt played Vanish in the Deadpool 2 movie, and you didn't even know it was him playing it until he got electrocuted and you can see his entire body. So I'm so glad they referenced that, because of course I didn't know that Keith was played by Brad Pitt until the credits. So they're making the same joke, and that is awesome. I'm so glad that John Krasinski thought of that. And Kaylee Fleming and Ryan Reynolds did a great job also as Bee and Calvin. They definitely stole the show. You can really feel the connection that they had, which you find out at the end why their connection was so strong. But of course, no spoilies, so you guys don't get to find out now. You'll have to watch it for yourself. But either way, the acting was great in this movie. The sixth essential aspect is cinematography. There wasn't really any cinematic scenes, but a really cool use of imagination in one of the scenes was when Bee literally changed the entire room and building just using her imagination, because of course it's an imaginary friend resort, so you use imagination to change what it looks like and all that. So that was a really cool scene to see of what she could come up with and how she's going to change the rooms. The seventh essential aspect is editing. So this movie is an hour and 44 minutes long, and honestly I think it's a solid length because they were able to wrap up the ending in a meaningful way within that time without kind of dragging it out or cutting it too short. So honestly, I do think that they paced the movie pretty well. The eighth essential aspect is soundtrack. So the soundtrack for this movie isn't anything too memorable, but they did do a good job of choosing a song that is very fairy tale, imaginary, childlike throughout the whole movie to make it really fit the vibe of the movie, of Bee still being a kid and everything she's going through. So they did do a good job with that, just nothing that really stands out. The ninth essential aspect is directing. So John Krasinski is the director of this movie, and his job as the director is to take these past 8 essential elements, put them together to make a good movie. And honestly, I think he did do a good job. Of course, it wasn't perfect. It did have its faults, but he worked with what he had and he did make a pretty good movie. Especially, I'm sure this movie is way better for kids than it was for me, because I'm going to be here picking it apart and treating things how I like them. And of course, I'm not going to be watching kids movies every single day. But for kids, he definitely did a great job. And he did previously direct 4 other movies, and they were Brief Interviews with Hideous Men, The Haulers, A Quiet Place, and A Quiet Place Part 2. So A Quiet Place 1 and 2 are definitely good movies. The other 2, not as much. I didn't see them, but based off of what I saw from the reviews, they weren't highly liked. But I definitely did enjoy If, so I think he definitely is moving in the right direction. And finally, the 10th essential aspect is time. So it's hard to tell if this movie will stand the test of time because it is still new. It's still in theaters as of the recording of this video. But I think the premise is unique enough where it could still be in the conversation a few years down the road. Because it's not a bad movie, it's still enjoyable. And because it talks about the imaginary friends that everyone had as a kid, I don't see any other movie being made like that. There definitely wasn't one from now, and if one gets made in the future, it's definitely going to be compared to this one. So I think that there is a solid chance it will stand the test of time. Now onto the reviews. So the reviews for this movie are all over the place. Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it a 48%, but Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it an 87%, and IMDb gave it a 67%. And I will have to be in between IMDb and the audience, because I don't think it belongs in 48%, and nowhere near that. I think it belongs in the high 60s to low 70s, because the movie does have its faults, but it's still an enjoyable watch. I will definitely rewatch this movie at some point. So I just don't think it deserves anywhere near 48%. We have arrived at the rankings. All right, the part you have all been waiting for is finally here. Where will If rank in its year, decade, and in all time? So, in 2024, it is the second movie I have reviewed, and it will be second under Fall Guy. I think Fall Guy definitely blows this movie out of the water. It's better in all the ways that it is. Of course, there are 2 different types of movies. That one's more action, this one's more comedy, but both are definitely good movies. I just think I would prefer to watch that movie if I had to choose between the 2. So that's for 2024. Now for the 2020s, I think that it will be somewhat similar because it's going to be second underneath Fall Guy and above Beautiful Disaster. Now, Beautiful Disaster is still a good movie. I just think that I would rather watch If. I mean, if I had to choose between the 2, If would be the one I choose. I think the comedy is similar in both. It's definitely for different tastes. It definitely depends on who you are, because of course If is more for kids or just like a lighter comedy, and Beautiful Disaster is more for adults and more R-rated comedies, so it really does depend on who you are. I think I would just prefer If a little more often than I would prefer watching Beautiful Disaster. And now for all time. So it's going to be fifth, underneath X-Men and above Kick-Ass. So X-Men, I think, is just more action-packed and I get more engaged watching it. So that is why I would rather watch that than If. But Kick-Ass, I just think watching that and then watching this, I think that I would rather watch a more subtle comedy than the cringy comedy that Kick-Ass does have. Now, of course, Kick-Ass is full of action, so you're always going to be engaged with the movie, and there are some dull points in If, but I think that it just still would beat it out. I personally think that If is a better movie than Kick-Ass. Again, I'm going to say this like I do with all of them. I would rather pick up a copy of If and watch it again than Kick-Ass. That's all I have for If. If you guys want me to review anything specific, definitely comment it in the comments. We're going to be continuing our X-Men saga after this video. Next is going to be X-Men The Last Stand, so stay tuned for that one. And either way, if you guys enjoyed this review, leave a like, subscribe, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Peace out.